three figures stood facing one another in a lonely grove northwest of Uranthal. Having come straight from Warden's Vale, Ilishnish's arrival at the adventurer training area was perhaps a bit too early, and it wasn't until an hour later that the rest of her party arrived. Resolving herself to face whatever horrors came, she broke the silence between them with an energetic greeting. "My name is Shiva, a bard. I had some trouble with my previous trial, but I hope to qualify for copper this time around. There are many things about adventuring that I'm unfamiliar with, but I have some confidence in my body. I'd appreciate more direct methods of instruction. I won't even mind a bit of abuse." Ilishnish folded her hands over her lap and bowed. The other female in the party clicked her tongue. The third member, a young human male, blushed furiously. His hazel eyes kept roaming over Ilishnish's figure, his lips worked to offer a reply. "Alice," the woman introduced herself. "Fighter. Maybe you would have done better on your last trial if you weren't so focused on trying to seduce your party, eh?" How did she come to that conclusion? Ilishnish had never encountered the woman before. "Hey," the man said, "maybe we shouldn't start out by picking a fight. I'm Richard, fighter." Richard held out his big hands in a placating gesture. Alice's blue-eyed expression darkened. She unclasped a buckler from her belt and drew her rapier. "Whatever," she snorted. "Let's just get this over with. You Shiva stand in the back like a good little bard and let us fighters do the work. You do have some spell songs, right? Or did you spend everything you had on that outrageous outfit?" Why was she being so hostile? Ilishnish had done nothing to provoke her. Her proposal felt satisfactory, however, letting others do the work while she stood safely in the back was a cozy arrangement. "I have a healing song," she offered. "Will that work?" "Well, at least you're not entirely dead weight," Alice replied. "But I'm serious about you staying in the back. My party failed the last trial because our bard thought he was hot shit and got himself stung through the gut by a giant wasp." "Oh, okay." Ilishnish considered telling Alice that a giant wasp couldn't even scratch her. In the end, she decided to just keep quiet. Something told her that things would deteriorate no matter what she said. "Hey," Alice said from the training area entrance, "what are you two dawdling for?" They followed Alice inside. Ilishnish gave Richard a sidelong glance. "You don't use a sword?" "Kinda strange, huh?" he replied sheepishly. "Sticks were cheaper to practice with, and the levy made us use spears anyway. Guess this is just how things turned out." He hefted a 2-meter-long quarterstaff, giving it an experimental swing. His choice made sense to Ilishnish. Humans were small and fragile, so they needed all the reach they could get in a fight. Why most insisted on using longswords at best was beyond her. They stopped in front of a corridor on the first floor. A sign marked with the number 3 hung overhead. Alice stormed straight in, her short bob of sandy blonde hair bouncing with every step. Richard picked up his pace. Their training course appeared to mimic a dwarven aqueduct, or was it a human sewer? The sound of flowing water echoed off of the stone walls, and Alice's loud advance only added to the clamor. What's the big rush?" Richard called out after her. "There's no time limit or anything. You're gonna get us in trouble, Alice." "The last time was easy," she replied with a pointed glance in Ilishnish's direction. "We would have passed if it wasn't for that damn bard screwing us over. Just keep up and help me kill everything." "Is that the goal?" Ilishnish asked. "Kill everything? I thought we were just supposed to make it to the end." Ilishnish's initial plan was to shroud them all with a spell song of invisibility. No matter what tricky things awaited them, they could just walk through without being challenged. "Less talking," Alice answered with a growl, "more singing. Let the fighters do the fighting." Ilishnish sighed, deciding upon a dwarven song of the hearth. The slow, warm medley filled the air, an invitation to rest and relax after a long and satisfying day of toil. "Whoa," Richard breathed. "I've never heard anything like that before." "It's a dwarf song," Ilishnish replied, "but it should suit our needs, yes?" She resumed her song before its effects lapsed. After learning how to render dancer forms, she marveled over how inconvenient singing could be when you were doing other things. Around the opening corner, they encountered their first opponent. Ilishnish breathed a sigh of relief. It wasn't one of those horrible bugs that made the rustling noises. Alice rushed forward with a shout, skewering the giant rat before it could react. The vanquished rodent dissipated into motes of mana. See, Alice flicked her blade. Easy, right? Beside her, Richard frowned, but Alice was too preoccupied with her advance to notice. She killed it, Ilishnish said after Alice vanished down the path and around another corner. What's there to frown over? Nothing, I guess. Old training, maybe. Maybe she's like that 'cause she's a girl. What does that mean? Ilishnish asked. Richard froze, looking like he had just tasted something unappetizing. Ilishnish leaned closer with a curious expression. That's, we raised different is all, he stammered. Women never got sent off to war. The village men that survived the yearly skirmish with the Empire would always drill the same stuff into us. Stay in formation, shoulder to shoulder, weapons straight out. Hold the line. Jumping out like some hero will just get you skewered by an Imperial knight. Running will get everyone killed, and no one wants to die. You fought at Katza Plains? No, he shook his head. I was 13 last winter. I'm a third son, so I'd have gone this year for sure. Except that all this happened, of course. Since I had this training I figured I'd give adventuring a shot. Girls like Alice, though, she probably has her head filled with stories of Blue Rose and other powerful women that became adventurers. Headstrong and out to prove herself, the exact thing they beat out of you in levy training. Hey! Alice's shout echoed up the corridor, where the hell are you two? Stop flirting and help me out. Richard gave Ilishnish a helpless look before jogging off. The second fight left Alice with a number of scratches. Though Ilishnish's spell song restored her to nominal condition in short order, the female fighter still glared daggers at her before heading off again. It was a process that repeated itself over and again. Alice would run off, start a fight without the rest of the party, then glare at Ilishnish while she slowly healed. By the time they made it to the goal, Ilishnish felt glad to be rid of her. We need to report to the main office now, I think, Richard said. Why? Ilishnish asked. I think that's what the receptionist lady said, Richard said. The proctor in charge of our trial will review things with us. Ilishnish looked around to see if Alice knew anything about that, but the woman was already headed out of the training area. They made their way to the central district, where their proctor awaited them on the third floor of the Adventurer Guild head office. Ilishnish stopped at the door when she realized who it was. Please come in, Lady Zaradnik said. This shouldn't take long. They lined up solemnly in front of her desk. Alice gave the Baroness an appraising look. Ilishnish pointedly avoided looking at her, and Richard was divided between doing one or the other. First of all, Lady Zaradnik said, I'd like to congratulate you on qualifying for your copper tags. You'll have to forgive the haphazard nature of our groupings, but new adventurer candidates don't grow on trees and it wouldn't be appropriate to have you wait for too long. Ilishnish and Richard breathed sighs of relief. Lady Zaradnik's gaze crossed over the three of them. There isn't much to say considering the simplicity of the trial, but there is at least one point of concern that I must address. Her gaze settled on Alice, who returned it with a hard look. According to your file, Lady Zaradnik said, you have a talent, yes? I do, Alice replied. I can move 20 meters without any physical exertion every 5 minutes. A hint of pride entered the woman's voice. Lady Zaradnik nodded. It's a useful talent for many situations. Is this also the reason why you kept running ahead? When else would I get to use it? Have you considered that you are not required to use it at all? Lady Zaradnik asked. Your behavior during the trial was both reckless and unwarranted. Richard recommended a more reasonable pace from the beginning, and there was no indication that you would be pressed for time. That's not my fault, Alice answered defensively. It's theirs for not keeping up. I wonder if enemies will accommodate your reasoning if you find yourself alone and surrounded out there. Lady Zaradnik's hand waved out over her head. I have a little place bordering the wildlands. Shall we find out? Alice fell silent, but her smoldering resentment was tangible. An adventurer party is a team, Lady Zaradnik told her. I have no qualms with your personal combat ability, and you have the sort of aggression that's suitable for a vanguard. However, antagonizing your party members and treating them like tag-along will not help you advance in the future. You will run into problems by silver if you can't learn to properly communicate and work together. Alice was left to stew, and the Baroness' gaze shifted over to Richard. You appear to have a good head on your shoulders, so far, she told him. If you're to lead, however, you must firmly establish your role in the eyes of your party. Adventurers are quite prideful, after all. Also, I look forward to having another polearm user in the guild. You use the same weapon? I was trained in the spear, Lady Zaradnik replied. I use something else now, but many of the fundamentals are the same. I'm sure you'll find yourself training under me sooner or later. Richard drew himself up. I look forward to it, miss. Lady Zaradnik reached into her desk drawer and placed 3 copper tags before them. Once again, congratulations, she told them. You may take your tags and sign up for further training at the guild reception. You'll be working with full parties from this point forward, so ready yourselves for what that entails. Alice snatched her tag from the desk. Richard reached out to take his, wordlessly bobbing his head before heading out the door. As Ilishnish stretched out a hand for hers, Lady Zaradnik spoke. I'd like to speak with you in private, Shiva. Ilishnish swallowed. What did she want? That damn snobby noble. Alice's fuming sounded from down the hall. Mithril, my ass. I bet she's never fought a thing in her life. Silence hung between them until the sound of the main door slamming shut reverberated up the stairwell. You did well, Shiva, Lady Zaradnik smiled. I did? But I just followed them around and got yelled at. Well, you did make quite the salacious introduction. I understood what you meant, but most humans would not. Don't be introducing yourself in the Empire like that, or you'll be igniting conflicts wherever you go. Will that really happen? It's not a given, the Baroness admitted, but you do have an aura of supernatural charisma. Even if you're not actively weaving spell songs or purposely wielding your abilities, you need to be aware of how it can still passively affect those around you. You'll be leaving a trail of amorous suitors and jealous wives in your wake, otherwise. It's not a reputation befitting one of my knights. Ilishnish knew that she could turn interactions in her favor with little effort, but it had always been a transient thing. Getting bits of information out of people or gaining an edge while haggling was one thing, what Lady Zaradnik suggested she could do was another. Now, Lady Zaradnik said, on to the main topic. Are you free this afternoon? I have Lady Wagner's training in the evening, but before that, yes. Good. We're short a member to start an iron rank trial early this afternoon. After that, we can have you fill out a different party for a silver rank trial. Do you think I can pass? Lady Zaradnik smirked. Failure would require a catastrophe of your own making, she said. All you have to do is the same thing as before. The effects of a healing song lighten the burden on party resources considerably. In fact, I'd rather you do that. If you start punching your way through everything, it will be difficult to gauge the progress of the other examinees. What if something bad happens to the party? Then I suppose you're punching your way through. I highly doubt it will happen, however. The guild's regimen has become far more robust over the past few months. It's to the point that Lord Mayor is once again considering an increase in difficulty to match our rank standards. Let's give it a try, Ilishnish decided. The sooner my pay goes up, the better. The Baroness raised an eyebrow. Is that the entire reason why you wanted to do this? Lady Shiltir ordered me to join. Ilishnish replied, I may as well make the best of it. I hope one day you'll understand that there are more important things than treasure. Of course there was something more important than treasure, herself. Her treasures came second, and anything else was a distant third by comparison. Ilishnish left the head office, heading back out to register with Ishpan in the plaza branch. The receptionist had a smug look, as if everything was going according to her plans. We'll have our first new adamantite by the end of the week, she said, but I still haven't figured out how to use you for advertising. You planned on using me this entire time? Of course. Ishpan swept out her arms in what she probably thought was a graceful gesture. You'll draw people like ants to honey. The beautiful adamantite dancer, Gem, we need to figure out a good name for you. What was wrong with Shiva? She thought it was well suited to her. You're getting ahead of yourself, Winner said from the side. I can't help but think something will go wrong now. PSH, nonsense, Ishpan waved her hand dismissively, she's already in the realm of heroes. Any trials until adamantite will be instantly crushed. Unless they fill it with bugs. Ilishnish shuddered, and Ishpan shot Winner a look. Anyway, she said, the party members in the queue are all training or studying in the city. You should be able to get started soon, so head on over. The Iron Rank trial went off without a hitch, as did the one for Silver. As evening approached, she found herself alone with Lady Zaradnik again. Is adventuring really this easy? Ilishnish asked. I just followed people around weaving the same spell song. They didn't even seem to mind that I was doing next to nothing. Actually, they were more interested in what other pieces I could perform, but that had nothing to do with the trial. Your expectations are a bit skewed, Lady Zaradnik said. I would venture to guess that it's rare for the party's bard to also be a dragon. In addition, the value of a bard to an adventuring party extends beyond matters of combat. They are more often than not the member most suited for negotiations, background research, procurement and public relations. Traditionally, adventurers spend the vast majority of their time outside of combat, so you could say that a bard does far more work than the rest of their party. But the Sorceress Kingdom's Adventurer Guild doesn't work that way anymore, Ilishnish pointed out. It just sounds like a whole lot of training if the chatter from the parties I've been in is to be believed. Entrenched expectations do not easily change, Lady Zaradnik said. Also, what you've been hearing is due to how our training regimen works early on. Adventurer parties begin to stabilize at Silver, so we try to get our members there as quickly as possible. After that, more time is put towards the study and development of spells, martial arts and skills. You'll have a broader taste of a bard's responsibilities when you start preparing for expeditions. Does that mean I have to stop and study as well? Ilishnish asked. Only if you'd like to, Lady Zaradnik answered. The guild is just as keen on having you reach Adamantite for the publicity. Then, I'd rather do that instead. I can always study later, but I'd be missing out on earnings if I loiter around at lower ranks. Lady Zaradnik snorted, shaking her head with a rueful smile. She reached into a desk drawer to pull out a clipboard. Diplomat slots are almost always what holds up training sessions, Lady Zaradnik said as she flipped through the pages. You can probably continue advancing as long as exams are being run. What sort of schedule did Countess Wagner come up with for you? She showed the Baroness her new, yet nearly identical schedule. You're at the dojo tomorrow, so we can set up a gold rank examination in 2 days. I'm not sure if there are enough for platinum after that, maybe something can be arranged. There aren't enough people? The majority of our gold ranks are on the Fiotivaz expedition right now, Lady Zaradnik told her. Those sitting out are mostly rangers that were on the Azalizia survey expedition. While I have a fair idea of how they would be able to pass, that sort of group won't meet examination standards. I see. Well, anything is better than nothing. I'll go as far as I can. Because the pay is better. Exactly. Ilishnish said, by the way, how did you know that I went to see Countess Wagner? You're here, aren't you? The Baroness replied, I left instructions for you to follow as soon as you returned from the north. But what if I didn't? Then I suppose I would be disappointed. For some reason, Ilishnish didn't want that. No rubies at all? Zushiro is so sorry. The Quagga lowered his head multiple times, there are none for sale today. TCH. The Merchant Guild agent turned on his heel, along with a half-dozen others. Ilishnish smiled apologetically at their retreating figures. They became angry. Zushiro wrung his claws nervously. Will ruin come for Zushiro next? It's all just posturing, Ilishnish said lightly. If they can convince you that you're obliged to give them what they want, most of their work is already done. I feel like an evil dragon is giving me advice on how to manipulate innocent people. Ilishnish gave the counter a whack. Zushiro's startled squeak sounded from deep inside the tent. You haven't made any promises with them, she told him. Aren't merchants supposed to be all about getting the most they can out of everything? No? Well, maybe. Zushiro is inexperienced, but both Lady Wagner and Lady Gonye say that the most valuable thing to a merchant is not money, but trust. Something about keeping an agreeable balance between reputation, quality and price. If one becomes too greedy, others will learn to come to you last. In the end, you will have lost countless opportunities and connections. I don't know about that, Ilishnish replied. In fact, I'm fairly certain that they're the ones who are being greedy. Have you been to the Merchant Guild office? Once, when I was new, Zushiro said. To register. It is very far away, and the streets are always very bright. If the dwarves were smart like humans and put magical lights everywhere, I don't think my people would have been able to nearly conquer them. We have no magic users, after all. Why hadn't they thought of that? Not being aware that they could simply blind their mortal enemies was quite the blind spot. How does that work now, anyway? Relations between the Quagga and the dwarves, Ilishnish said. Those fellows love to nurse their grudges. You've been rivals since before the time of the demon gods, yet now it seems you're happily working hand in hand. There have been many absurd things recently, Zusharu shrugged. All one can do is laugh and give up. In their weakness, the mortal races probably had an advantage there. It was difficult for a dragon to swallow their pride and relinquish their position of dominance. Frost dragons never forget any slight or wrongdoing made against them, so it was impossible to imagine how the dwarves and Quagga could just give up on their ancient rivalry. That can't be healthy, she said. Why not just clobber each other periodically? You, Mr. Dwarf, how do you feel about the Quagga these days? The dwarf, who was browsing through the metal ores on display, looked up with a confused expression. His gaze shifted from side to side. Doesn't affect my business, if that's what you mean. This ore didn't do anything to me and my kin. But what about the Quagga themselves? You've been rivals under the Azalizia Mountains since time immemorial. The dwarf gave her a non-committal shrug, and Ilishnish resisted the urge to shake her head. As if to make a point over it not mattering anymore, he purchased a hefty volume of silver-bearing ores before continuing on his way. Why, you're going to get us in trouble. Zusha whined from behind her. A death knight will drag us away for fermenting discord. The Quagga's vocabulary had inexplicably expanded since she first met him. He had become uncanny with numbers, as well. Nonsense, Ilishnish replied. I doubt a death knight could drag me anywhere. Besides, the only reason the dwarf bought so much was that he didn't want to be seen as discriminating against Quagga. Zusharu thinks that people would have second thoughts about Zusharu's wife if they knew she was so evil. I'm not your wife. Then why are you caring for Zusharu so much? We have a warm tent now, with blankets. This sweater is nice and cozy. You bought so many things for Zusharu that anyone would believe you are building a nest. Ilishnish frowned at his reply. Like many other mortals, it only took the smallest suggestion to turn their minds to breeding. It seemed that she couldn't make any improvements to her surroundings without everyone around her speculating over whether they had attracted her interest somehow. I told you it was about your stand, did I not? She said after they finished dealing with another customer. The better things look, the greater the chances you'll attract customers and sell your goods. You're paying me back for all this, by the way. I am? Of course you are. It's, what did you call it again? Yes, an investment. I can do better than that postal bank too. For every year that I keep my investment with you, you will pay me back triple. How is that better? His voice rose in alarm. This is not good for Zusharu. But it is good for me. A clamor rose from inside the tent. 1 minute later, a small sack of coins landed on the table. That was quick. Ilishnish sifted through the payment. I thought investments were supposed to last tens of thousands of years. Zusharu was wrong to compare you to a dragon. But I am a dragon? No, this is much worse, Zusharu told her. A dragon will only eat Zusharu. This is something only humans could do. Ilishnish looked over her shoulder to either Quagga. Humans? Yes, he nodded. I have heard the tales. Generations enslaved by debts so great that those under them can only languish in despair as they helplessly sink lower. Families must sell off their children just to make payments. Ilishnish was shocked and greatly unsettled over the travesty. She would see what she could do to right such wrongs. It wasn't proper that humans could do better than dragons at collecting treasure. She was certain she could do better. Oh, it's nice and bright here now. A middle-aged man with a strange sort of monocle came up to the stand. I guess this is your doing, miss? That's right, dear customer, she smiled in welcome. The previous stand did our wares little justice. Please feel free to take a look. The man, some sort of jeweler, if the instrument over his eye was any indication, grunted in response and stepped to the side. He started sifting through a box of emeralds, carefully appraising each under one of the lights set up along the stand. 2 of the 4 magic lights were placed over the stall, while the other 2 were placed in makeshift booths where shoppers could take a closer look at pieces of interest. The worn and splintered table was covered over with layers of cloth, and the tent that half hung over the stand gave it the appearance of a small storefront. Their disadvantageous position had been turned in their favor, as the lights made them a bright spot along the otherwise shadowed aisle. Several other stands moved closer to take advantage of the light, bringing even more people their way. Zushiru sat in the shadows of the tent at his new desk, wrapped up in his new blanket. His appearance was serviceable for the time being, but Ilishnish resolved to improve that at some point as well. With the modifications to the stand, their inventories were looking sparse far earlier than the previous evening. "We should close up the stand early," Ilishnish told Zushiru. "We should? It looks like the others do the same when their inventories dwindle as ours have," Ilishnish said. "They don't appear to try and send every last thing." Gem, this is probably because it is no longer worth the time after a certain point. But things in the demi-human quarters shouldn't change much even if we are there. Let's go. They packed away the tent and stand. Zushiru's employees expressed their surprise over his early return. "Master, did something happen?" one of them asked. Yes," Zushiru nodded. "With the changes to the stand, we were able to sell our goods much faster." Murmurs of awe rose from the assembled apprentices. As expected of Zushiru's wife. "With you by the master's side, our company will rule the world." I wish for a wife like Zushiru's wife. Ilishnish wasn't sure how she felt about ruling the world at the side of a Kwagawa. Not that she thought Zushiru would come anywhere remotely close to ruling the world. She cleared her throat. "Zushiru, there's something I want to do with you." The Kwagawa froze. Do me? I've no idea what that's supposed to mean." Ilishnish took his paw in hers. "Come, let's go somewhere where we can be alone." The apprentices whistled and stamped their feet. "Go, master. I told you she was interested. Make our ancestors proud." Ilishnish dragged him off, and Zushiru squeezed his eyes shut as she led him out through the northern gate of the city. He opened them again when they walked out into the field northwest of the wall. "This is very sudden," the Kwagawa's fur stood on end. "Zushiru's heart needs time to prepare." "Nonsense," Ilishnish fished out a tarp from her infinite haversack. "You can last 20 minutes, can't you?" 20 minutes? She laid the tarp out on the grass. "Lie down," Ilishnish told him. "The experience won't kill you." "Probably." Mother, father," Zushiru sighed as he lay flat on his back. Zushiru never expected it to happen like this. Wait, what are you doing? His voice grew muffled as Ilishnish rolled him up in the tarp. After a moment, his head popped out of one end. This kind of thing is too advanced for Zushiru. Why can't we Ilishnish returned to her dragon self, snatched the rolled-up Kwagawa in one of her claws and took wing. Zushiru's terrified squeals trailed in their wake as they skimmed a scarce dozen meters over the land. Her claws twitched as the tarp wriggled around. "Stop squirming or I might reflexively squish you." Zushiru stopped. Ilishnish descended along the valley to the river, banking to follow its course. "Are you feeling cold?" she asked. "Zushiru is feeling sick." "Sick? You. Stop that. You're going to get it under my scales." She tossed the tarp from claw to claw, trying to shake away the disgusting feeling without much success. In the end, she lowered herself to skim the river's surface, dipping her claws in to wash the putrid substance away. Was that what half-digested Oran meat smelled like? "Really," she said, "that wasn't nice at all. If you plan on succeeding as a merchant, vomiting on people is something you'll need to avoid. Do you hear me, Zushiru?" "Zushiru." Ilishnish looked down at her foreclaws. The Kwagawa's head lolled limply out of the tarp, froth lining his mouth. At least he wasn't throwing up anymore. Or screaming. She wasn't confident that she could keep him alive if he drew the attention of nearby sheep. When they arrived in Warden's Vale, Ilishnish dunked Zushiru in the river several times. "Eh? What?" "We're here," Ilishnish told him. "You still have the rubies you withheld today, yes?" Zushiru shook out his fur before digging around in his satchel. He produced a small bag. "Where is Zushiru?" he asked. "Warden's Vale," Ilishnish replied. "I'm pretty sure this is where your rubies have been going." She led them to an awaiting wagon on the harbor, and the Solita took them to the village plaza. Zushiru's nose constantly worked as he looked around them. This smell is unsettling, he frowned. Shouldn't you be used to the surface by now? The odors in the city are less green, Zushiru replied. Here, I feel that a tree might jump out and attack me at any time. A tree? Ilishnish furrowed her brow at the mental image. You mean something like a Trent or a Dryad? Zushiru does not know what those are. Ilishnish provided an explanation, and his mouth fell open in horror. How can such terrifying creatures exist? His voice was fearful. Are there any here? This island is rocky and barren, Ilishnish replied. I doubt anything like that could pop up here. The plaza was too bright for Zushiru, so Ilishnish led him to the back door of the magic item shop. It took her several sets of knocks to get the clerk to answer. Dame Verilyn? He peeked out at her. The store is still open. Was the door accidentally locked? No, nothing like that, she replied. I chose this side on purpose. There's someone I'd like for you to meet. The clerk's brows knit together in confusion. He drew a sharp breath after stepping out. By the 6W, what is that? A beast man? Are we being raided? You're technically not wrong. Zushiru is a member of the Quagua, a race of mole beastmen. Zushiru bobbed his head in greeting, offering a smile that sent the clerk back into the doorframe. More importantly to you, Ilishnish continued, Zushiru is here to sell you some rubies. Rubies, you say? Zushiru held out his bag of gems. After a brief examination and a minute or two of haggling, he came away with a merchant guild invoice. Those agents, he grumbled, they were making 4 times what they paid Zushiru. Lady Wagner was right when she spoke of trust. Now, I do not wish to ever deal with them again. Until they have something that you need. Zushiru will work to expand his network of contacts. This ignorance is truly terrifying. Why don't you hire someone that can do things around the city for you? Unless you plan on trying to process that at the Merchant Guild yourself. Zushiru frowned down at his receipt of sale. He looked up at her hopefully. I'm not your minion, Ilishnish told him. But you have already done so many things for Zushiru. Because I felt like it. You need a more permanent solution. Then I will have to find someone in the city. Zushiru put away the receipt. How far are we? Since we are no longer in a hurry, we can walk, yes? Ilishnish pulled the tarp out of her infinite haversack, spreading it out over the ground. At the rate that you waddle, it would take us over a week. Lie down, Zushiru. Zushiru sighed. Arranged attack? Late the next evening, Ilishnish and Master Tien sat facing one another in the main hall of the Justice Dragon Dojo. A light breeze flowed through the open doors of the building, sending the cheap paper wall hangings swaying back and forth. The old human had added a half-dozen more of the things to his collection. Ilishnish still could not figure out why he chose items of such negligible value to adorn his establishment. Yes, Master Tien, she nodded. I've been making some progress through the Adventurer Guild's ranks, and my lack of ranged options has been made annoyingly clear during their trials. Though she was mindful of the time, sweat tended to appear around midnight, she felt the need to ask while she had the chance. Would it not be easier to close distance and strike decisively? I agree, Ilishnish nodded, but the parties that I've participated in appear to have certain expectations for bards. Namely, they want me to stand back at a safe distance and provide support with spell songs. I worry over whether I can establish my value by being so passive, so I'd at least like to have the option to conduct attacks without doing something that would draw the ire of my party. I see, the old human stroked his beard thoughtfully. I'm not very familiar with the capabilities of the local adventurers. How strong are these parties? The last was silver, Master Tien, Ilishnish replied. I have a gold rank trial in the morning, so I was wondering if there was anything you could think of that might help. The gloved hand on the beard stopped, and a furrow appeared over the old human's brow. Silver, and gold? If I recall correctly, is there any reason why you cannot make your strength clear to the other party members? It would defeat the purpose of the trial, Ilishnish told him. They are but a formality for me, but they are meant to be a series of challenges for the rest of the party. Human law has many examples of bards that use bows, some even double as instruments, but that's clearly not for me. I'd just like something that allows me to directly influence the course of a fight should it be required. Ho! A gleam of approval entered Master Tien's eye. To think that you've assumed the role of a benevolent protector. You've come a long way from the person I met months ago. I wouldn't exactly call myself that, Ilishnish replied. I've only gotten the guild out of trouble once. Or twice? Had she actually become what Master Tien described? She helped the adventurers out with the frost giants twice. Now she followed their whelps around and kept them healthy from a distance. She was even looking for ways to intervene in their fights. Anyway, Ilishnish continued, it'll be good to have for the future. I can't use my breath weapon as a human and it would kill everyone in the way even if I could. Something I can perform at a moment's notice would be nice. Master Tien reached into his vest, pulling out a copper coin. Holding it between the knuckle of his forefinger and his thumb, he flicked it past Ilishnish's shoulder. A hollow tack sounded from behind her. Something like that? Master Tien asked. Ilishnish rose and went to examine the pillar where the coin had buried itself. Human hands can do this? If it's too foreign of a movement, you could always throw rocks. This was something she had briefly considered, but a recent experience convinced her that it was probably a bad idea. The last time I sent a rock flying somewhere, Ilishnish told him, I almost crushed an entire party of adventurers. Shouldn't there be something with more control? I've heard tales of humans able to use martial arts that deliver long-distance strikes with melee attacks. Such as, what did he call it again? Void Cutter? I haven't any idea what that is. A man that I happened to come across in Riestais over a year ago possessed an attack he was quite confident in. I think it was a strike that was supposed to have the appearance of cutting down his opponents at a distance. Ilishnish returned to seat herself before Master Tien again, eyes sparkling. That sounds promising, let's try that. Unfortunately, it was little more than a trick performed through the use of a specialized weapon. Oh. Her shoulders slouched. Why did everything have to be so complicated? Yes, Master Tien shook his head gravely, I was somewhat disappointed as well. To think that I delayed the execution of my orders by several seconds because of that. So there's nothing? On the contrary, Master Tien offered her a tight smile, there are more than a few possibilities for unarmed combat. I've just not seen anyone use them in my time here. Master Tien rose to his feet, gesturing for Ilishnish to follow. He led her out to the backyard of the dojo. Let's see, please stand those logs of firewood in a row along the wall. Ilishnish did as Master Tien bid, lining up 3 thick pine logs, then scurried back to join him. Controlling my strength for this will be a bit difficult, but I believe I can manage. Master Tien fell into a combat-ready stance, a look of concentration on his face. With a short grunt, his arm came around in a swift chopping motion. 50 meters away, one of the logs was split cleanly in 2. His other hand swept across horizontally, fingers splayed as he made a raking motion. Another log was divided into 6 horizontal sections. Finally, he struck out with his right palm. The last log disintegrated into a pile of sawdust. Master Tien straightened from his stance and walked over with his hands clasped behind his back. As expected, he shook his head, refining power to such minute levels is more difficult than it seems. I only meant to knock that last one into the wall. A gust of wind blew away the remains of the log before Ilishnish collected her wits again. I'll take it. She ran forward to join him. Teach me how to do that please, Master Tien. Truly? Well, come to think of it, do you have any combat skills? I don't think I've witnessed you using any since we became acquainted. Then again, they are often performed silently by the locals. Skills? Ilishnish frowned, I have Spellsong. Spellsong is indeed a type of skill, Master Tien told her, but I was referring to those associated with your capacity as an unarmed combatant. I believe you've witnessed some of our more promising disciples use a variety of rudimentary techniques today. They hadn't grown much stronger since she last saw them, but Ilishnish supposed that a few had used more powerful attacks. Their actions gave little hint as to what they did to achieve them, however. It was all a bunch of scary yelling and swinging to her. I don't think I have anything similar, Ilishnish admitted. I don't do much beyond practicing what I've learned from you. Is there some secret to it? It is a matter of key manipulation. Key? You were away when I deemed the leading disciples sufficiently advanced to begin that aspect of their training, Master Tien told her. All beings have pools of inner energy, key, and monks may draw from it to enhance their bodies, manipulate the ki of others, and even project power outwards if they have achieved a certain level of mastery. The locals most commonly see it in the form of self-enhancement that imbues both their natural offense and defense with the equivalent strength of enchanted alloys. But I'm a dragon, Elishnish said. My natural weapons and armor become stronger with age, so that's not necessary. Even now, I can probably tear Mithril apart with relatively little difficulty. So you haven't employed anything actively with your attacks aside from spellsong? Elishnish shook her head. Not in the way you mean, no. Then I believe we are at an impasse of sorts, Master Tien told her. As a monk, I can train you in the fundamentals of unarmed combat that would overlap with a dancer class. If we pursue the harnessing of ki, however, you will almost certainly end up with monk levels. I believe you are set on your course as a bard? Yes, that's right. Then, forgive me for sounding unreliable, but the answers you seek may rest with those who have developed skills and abilities that do not utilize ki. Perhaps there are other bards with whom you might be able to confer with. The way that the other adventurers treated her, she didn't think that she would have any luck with other bards. Perhaps it was something they pursued then they were considered durable enough to survive frontline combat, but the only ones that might be strong enough for that were all in Fiotivaz. How about martial arts? She asked. As far as my studies on the topic have shown me, Master Tien answered, martial arts are restricted to classes that fall within the broad warrior archetype. Monks are also considered a sort of warrior, but we have a system unique to us. You may be onto something. I am? Yes. It may not have anything specifically to do with martial arts, but every job class specialized for physical combat has a kit, so to speak. You are familiar with monks, so let's take another job class, paladins, for instance. I don't know any paladins, Elishnish said. I don't think there are any paladins at all in the Sorcerer's Kingdom. Master Tien appeared to pause in thought, his hand coming up to stroke his beard again. I believe you are correct, he said. How strange. There are many temples and shrines in the territory, and paladins are a perfectly respectable job class. Are they? Elishnish asked. Human law makes them sound insufferable. Since there are none here, Master Tien answered, I have no way to investigate the truth of the matter. There should be no practical issues with the job class itself. The strongest man I know of happens to be a paladin. Elishnish considered asking whether this strongest man was even stronger than the Sorcerer King. She kept her question to herself, however, it was possible that she would be punished for even suggesting such a thing. Paladins, Master Tien told her, on the most fundamental of levels, are built around defense and sustainability. They employ a combination of skills, spells and abilities to form their own distinct flavor. All job classes are like this. As a dancer, a draconic dancer, for that matter, your flavor is distinct. This being the case, it stands to reason that there is also a system that supports your unique style of combat. Elishnish became lost in the mire of Master Tien's words long before he finished. Rather than ask that he repeat himself, she begged him to write it all down in her notebook so she could study it later. Several of my colleagues have a more in-depth understanding of what I've been trying to describe, Master Tien murmured as he jotted down the details with a shiny black pen. Perhaps it would be better if I direct you towards. A rogue current of air drifted in through the dojo. Lord Sabos? Tsue's voice drifted in from the front entrance. Startled, Elishnish snatched her notepad and leapt over the fence. She twisted in midair to avoid landing on a shocked goblin. Before he could cry out in alarm, she grabbed his head and squished his face into her chest. Lord Sabos? Tsue's voice drew closer. Ah, Tsue, Master Tien said, did I leave the broom at the front entrance? Yes, it's right here. What happened? I was demonstrating some ranged techniques and overdid it with one of them. There's sawdust all over the backyard now. Elishnish glanced down at the goblin. The scrawny little demi-human had passed out, so she silently let him down before sneaking out of the quarter. After reading Master Tien's notes for the fourth time, Elishnish remained as clueless as before. She entered the central distinct to see if any clues could be discerned from practicing adventurers, but it appeared that they had all retired for the night. With a tired sigh, she started to wander around again, wondering what to do. She had a gold rank examination in the morning. With how chaotic the adventurer battles could become, Throwing rocks was as likely to kill a party member as an enemy. It was probably better to stick with Lady Zaradnik's advice. At the thought of the human noblewoman, Ilishnish turned to head towards her city manor. Lady Zaradnik had set aside a room for her, and Ilishnish was feeling too lethargic to fly all the way home. The Death Knights at the gate did not move to challenge her entry, and she opened the door, careful not to make any noise. As she padded her way inside, Ilishnish stopped when she found herself facing Lady Zaradnik, who was lounging in the patio. The human noble looked up and offered her a smile. "Welcome back, Dame Verilyn,"